The main course we share today is the control of the ejaculation threshold. Let's define the ejaculation threshold first. The ejaculation threshold can be understood as the ejaculation line, which is the ejaculation threshold we mentioned in the previous course. We have three distinct phases in sex: the sexual pleasure period, the ejaculation urgency period, the ejaculation period, and the ejaculation urgency period determine the ejaculation. The first point is that all of our sensory organs are responsible for receiving and transmitting signals of sexual stimulation. And these signals of sexual stimulation are transmitted to the brain sexual center, which is the period of sexual pleasure. When the sexual excitement impulse continues to build up to a certain level, there is a slight desire to ejaculate. This is the ejaculation urgency period. If the sexual stimulation continues, the libido energy will be elevated further, and when it exceeds the highest brain nerve tolerance strength, it will stimulate the ejaculation response, which will appear as ejaculation. The key to control ejaculation is determining whether we are currently in the ejaculatory urgency phase. This is the main point we will discuss today. As we discussed in the previous course, the intentional breathing method and sympathetic, parasympathetic nerve control are designed to allow us to stop before the ejaculation threshold and fade the ejaculatory urgency through simple and effective methods to achieve our goal. We can visualize the feeling using this picture because the ejaculation threshold is a feeling that is difficult to grasp. This is the process by which most male compatriots masturbate or have sex, from the beginning to receive sexual stimulation. Libido energy will continue to accumulate up towards the ejaculation line when beyond the ejaculation threshold and beyond the intensity of the brain's highest tolerance for sexual stimulation. Stimulate the ejaculation response and the ejaculation ends. The length of sexual pleasure period varies for each person. Some people can last several minutes, while others may be a few seconds. This is because each person's highest tolerance for sexual stimulation intensity varies, resulting in huge differences. Thankfully, the highest tolerance intensity can be improved through acquired exercise, and those who insist on a long time, but it may also be intentional or unintentional exercise. The most important aspect is that you can make it and overcome PE for sure. Friends who have PE should not be discouraged. Rather, once the ejaculation line is crossed during sex, we say that ejaculation is unavoidable. Even professional male porn stars cannot escape the result of ejaculation. This is why we can't control ourselves to ejaculate during sex, precisely because we lack the ability to identify and control the ejaculation threshold. Unfortunately, most people are unaware of the existence of the ejaculation threshold, let alone that it can be exercised and controlled. And they may repeat the ejaculation process for their whole lives. We can conclude from this graph that PE is the result of a short sexual pleasure period. The ejaculatory urgency enters too fast before enjoying the pleasure period for a while and does not know how to reduce the urgency, thus entering the ejaculatory period and the inevitable end of ejaculation. We must practice extending the ejaculatory pleasure period to overcome PE at its root. We will discuss finding the critical point of ejaculation urgency in the following section. I believe we all understand that the key to prolonging the period of sexual pleasure is not to allow yourself to enter the ejaculation period. So we must find what the emergence of ejaculation urgency is, and what kind of feeling in the body when enter urgency period. When men ejaculate, they will generally notice visible changes in their bodies. For example, the genitals become more rigid, the heartbeat quickens, there is shortness of breath, the brain feels fuzzy, the testicles tighten, the thigh muscles tighten, and so on. I believe that when we experience the feeling before ejaculation by heart in the future, we will all be able to feel this aspect of the situation very clearly. This is referred to as the ejaculation threshold. The next topic we'll cover is the sense of ejaculation urgency, which occurs when you vaguely perceive the sensation of ejaculation. The idea is that the smaller the sensation, the easier it is to stop sexual stimulation, leaving more room to last longer. When the need to ejaculate becomes overwhelming, You may find yourself unable to control the brakes and forced to ejaculate. Even if you grit your teeth and keep the sperm from ejaculating, the margin for subsequent practice will definitely become smaller and smaller, and usually, in less than a few stimulations of the brain, the sensation of the ejaculation will reappear. The initial stage of learning to control the urgency of ejaculation, the focus is on learning when to stop stimulation and master the point in time. Once you can do it in time to pause at the right time, then as the number of practice increases, the impression of ejaculation urgency and design threshold will gradually materialize, which improves our ability to freely control the time of ejaculation and lots of things. Suppose you want to improve the brain's tolerance for sexual pleasure. In that case, you have to extend the duration of the sexual pleasure period, which is the most critical point, not to enter the ejaculation period. In the lasting exercise, if there's an ejaculation urgency, we must promptly suspend all sexual stimulation through the control of the PC muscle as what we call the small break method, or with abdominal breathing method, which is the big break method to fade the sense of urgency, and then repeat the practice process until the completion of the target practice time. The initial stage of practice, we have to set ourselves a goal, at least 15 minutes to complete the principle of practice. As long as we can adhere to repeated practice, not only the period of sexual pleasure will be greatly extended, the brain's tolerance for sexual pleasure will also improve, while the thickness of the ejaculation line will also increase. The situation of not practicing as before with a little feeling of the ejaculation will not occur anymore. The following chart shows the state of the practice when the ejaculation urgency is close to the ejaculation line. We can control the ejaculation urgency to return to the pleasure area so that we can repeat the experience of sexual pleasure, rather than ejaculation while prolonging the period of sexual pleasure by practicing for a long time. The thickness of the ejaculation line will also increase, which makes our control of ejaculation during sex more comfortable. The control will become more comfortable during sex. I hope we can all find the ejaculation urgency and shoot critical points for the first time. This is a stage that is crucial for us to practice. We may just start practicing, we will be greedy for pleasure enjoyment and can't stop, but it doesn't matter. We will experience this process, failure once, twice, or even 10 times. 20 times can't back down or give up, as long as you can learn by heart repeatedly. Insist on practicing, and you will be able to easily control your sense of urgency eventually. Of course, your sexual pleasure period will be gradually extended during this time, and the problem of premature ejaculation will naturally find a fundamental solution. We'll see you in the next class.